Chapter 2. I watched this film about a tank battle once. There were all these invincible armour-plated tanks. They were even bazooka-proof. The heroes were losing, of course, until Colonel Cleverclogs, I forgot his real name, came up with his
brilliant plan.
We must use the tank's own strength against itself, he said. If it's impossible for a shell to get through all that armour plate, it must be impossible for a shell to get out. We shall blow up them from the inside. And it's exactly what they did. Brilliant film. Dad didn't like it, of course. He doesn't like noisy action films with lots of explosions. He prefers watching golf. But have you ever seen an exciting golf match? I reckon golf would be a lot more fun if there were a couple of tanks playing and a few explosions. It would be quite interesting to see a nice big tank rumble across the green square upon the tee, lift its powerful barrel and shoot golf balls right across the golf course. So what has all this got to do with Streaker? Well, I spent ages trying to work out the best way of dealing with the dog. I asked myself, what does Streaker do best? There were several answers to this. 1, make a pig of herself. 2, dig huge holes in the lawn. 3,
smell.
But I reckon that the one thing she really shone at was speed. Streaker was a rocket on 4 legs. Maybe I could use her fantastic speed to my own ends. And that was when I remembered my roller skates. I hadn't used them for months. Yeah, I hadn't seen them for months. All I had to do was hang on Streaker's lead, and that way she would get exercise and I'd get a free ride. You've got to admit it was a pretty jammy idea. Mum and Dad didn't think much of it though. Mum sat at the lunch table in silence, eating her 99% fat-free yogurt that tasted like washing up water. She obviously wasn't impressed. She didn't think much of the yogurt either. I know your clever ideas, Trevor, said Dad.
They never were.
Yes, they do, I protested. Look what happened when you tried to build an assault course in your bedroom. Parents have this amazing way of bringing your most spectacular failures into general conversation, don't they? I could feel myself turning bright red. This wasn't my fault. I didn't know that fixing a squiddly bit of rope to the ceiling would bring all the plaster down. Dad grunted and Mum pushed the remains of her yogurt across the table. Would you like to finish it for me? She asked. Why do you keep trying to poison me? I wanted to know. Mum gave me a wan smile and chewed the end of a celery stick. I was determined to prove them wrong. I launched a major expeditionary search into the bowels of my wardrobe and eventually managed to find both roller skates. I spun the wheels and they gave a very satisfying shh. How could this plan fail? I kept Streaker tied to the gatepost while I put on my skates. Then I carefully unwound the lead from the gate, wrapped it round my wrist and then crouched low behind her. Okay, Streaker.
Lift off!
She hardly needed any encouragement. Her front paws churned away just like they did in cartoons, and we were off, with Streaker's ears streaming out behind her like jet trails. I was amazed by her strength and speed. Even pulling me didn't prevent her from quickly reaching something that felt like Mach 1. Her legs pounded the pavement and she barked happily as we flew along. She loved it. I simply held on to the lead and felt the wind racing through my hair. We skidded around the corner in great style and Streaker headed up the main road towards the street market. I reckoned it was time to slow down a bit, but of course I didn't have any brakes. Neither did the dog. Anyhow, by this time Streaker had switched to
turbo boost.
There was no stopping her. We hit the market at maximum speed, scattering shoppers in every direction. I held on for dear life as we zigzagged through the startled crowd, careering wildly from one side to the other. It was all I could do to stay upright. Streaker suddenly swerved violently to one side to avoid a mesmerised old lady. I had to fling out one arm as a counterbalance, and I somehow managed to get her handbag stuck on it.
Help, I've been robbed.
Stop that boy, he's taken my bag. In no time at all, the whole market seemed to be after me, but there was no way I could stop and explain. Streaker was really enjoying herself. There's nothing she likes more than a good chase. She doesn't even care if she's chasing or being chased. We went screaming round the corners so fast that my skates started to smoke. We lurched into stalls, sending them tumbling over and spilling the contents every which way. Crashed into people and bounced off them. And all the time the crowd behind was getting bigger and bigger and noisier. Stop that boy! He's stolen an old an old lady's bag.
Get the bag catcher.
Streaker whizzed round the next corner so fast that she rolled over and over, and of course I just carried straight on and smashed headlong into a rack of dresses. Before I knew it, I was hauled to my feet by a very angry mob. Not only was I still clutching the old lady's handbag, but I had a rather stunning flower print sundress draped fetchingly over one shoulder. To cut a long story short, I was carted off to the police station along with Streaker. She sat attentively in the corner and looked completely innocent while I was almost arrested. Just to make the matters worse, the policeman on desk duty was Sergeant Smug. He lives up the road from us and he's got 3 Alsatians. Personally speaking, I think half an Alsatian is a bit too much, but
3.
Sergeant Smug rang home and Dad had to come and get us. He wasn't very pleased, and not just because he had been dragged away from a nice kip on the sofa. Dad caught Sergeant Smug cheating in a golf match last summer and they have been at war with each other ever since. I explained that it was all an accident, it was Streaker's fault. Sergeant Smug looked at the ceiling and rolled his eyes. Of course, he said heavily. I should have known. The dog did it. The dog stole the handbag. That isn't what I meant, I said, and I tried to explain about the roller skates and being towed and everything. Sergeant Smug started laughing silently. You know, a sort of, ha ha ha, do you really expect me to believe that kind of laugh. Dad was getting more and more annoyed at having his time wasted. It's quite obvious that Trevor is telling the truth, Mr. Smug, he snapped. He's hardly likely to make up such a story. It was the dog's fault. She's like it all the time. The policeman looked across at Streaker, who was still sitting there angelically. Sergeant Smug, if you don't mind, not Mister, he insisted, and you can hardly blame the poor dog for all this. At that point, the poor dog suddenly came to life. Streaker leaped up, raced across the room, launched herself across the sergeant's desk, scattering everything to the 4 winds, and threw herself cheerfully into Dad's lap. Despite the fact that he was standing up, they both fell in a heap on the floor, and Streaker proceeded to give Dad's ears a good clean-out. What did she do that for? Demanded Sergeant Smug. No idea at all, Dad answered from floor level. I told you, she's like this all the time. Sergeant Smug frowned and shook his head. Your dog's loopy. She needs to see a dog psychiatrist, and let us go home. I won't bore you with all the things Dad said on the way back, but most of them carried threats of instant death, so my first plan had proved spectacularly unsuccessful. Maybe it was time to call in reinforcements. I decided to go and see my best friend, Tina.